The Nintendo Entertainment System. Long before the likes of the Wii U and the 3DS, Nintendo was ruling the video game world with their tried-and-true 8-bit technology that took the world by storm and remained popular with consumers for nearly 10 years. This was Nintendo's first major product released outside of Japan, and it started a revolution that recovered the industry after the infamous video game crash of 1983. The Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES for short, launched Nintendo to the forefront of video game prominence, where they remain to this day among Sony and Microsoft. But let's take a step back for a moment and look at the system that started it all, before handheld video game systems were common, and before Xbox and PlayStation even existed. Nintendo is a company based primarily in Japan, although they have branches in most major countries. Before the NES, Nintendo tried their luck with a few arcade games, the first of which was Radarscope. A spaceship shooter type game. It did not do well in arcades, and Nintendo almost went bankrupt before the success of Donkey Kong helped them recover. There were a few Nintendo units that were only released in Japan, such as the Color TV game 15, but Nintendo released their first cartridge-based system, the Family Computer, in 1983. The Family Computer, which was commonly abbreviated to Famicom, did very well in its first years, and soon Nintendo was looking towards a worldwide release. The North American market, however, would prove difficult to enter into, as it was just recovering from a massive video game market crash, where consumers were given too many systems to choose from and too many games, and not enough information about any of them. As a result, prices of games and systems plunged down, and video game manufacturers were quickly losing money. The failure of the Atari 2600 version of Pac-Man, as well as E.T. the video game, are a few things that come to mind at the very mention of the video game crash. To enter into this failing market, the Famicom received a complete design overhaul in North America, appearing more like a VCR than a video game system. The top-loading cartridge slot of the Famicom was also changed to a side-loading mechanism that resembled a VCR even more closely. This was an intentional design choice, as Nintendo wished to market the system as an entertainment system rather than a video game system. Helping validate this point was Rob the Robot, an interactive robot whose intention was to play the game along with the player, creating a feeling of interactivity. This marketing strategy helped to set the NES apart from previous consoles, and as a result, the video game market became more stable, paving the way for the NES to become one of the best-selling and most recognized video game consoles of all time.
Now you're playing with power.
The system itself was packaged in a variety of bundles over the course of its almost decade-long production run. The original bundle, the deluxe set, included Rob the Robot with all his accessories, as well as the Zapper light gun and 3 games, Super Mario Bros., Duck Hunt, and Gyromite. The deluxe set was by far the bundle that included the most, but Nintendo also did other bundles such as the Challenge set, which included Super Mario Bros. 3, the Sports set, which highlighted the NES's 4-player features, and the Power set, which included the Power Pad, which could be used in games like World Class Track Meet. Of all these bundles, however, the one most consumers were familiar with was definitely the original Action set. This is probably what most people think of when someone mentions the Nintendo Entertainment System. The NES, 2 controllers, the Zapper, and the famous Super Mario Bros. Duck Hunt combo cartridge. This is probably the most common NES game in existence, and for good reason. It was included with every Action set, as well as a few other variations of the NES. This cartridge provided many people with the perfect introduction to the system itself. Speaking of the system itself, let's take a closer look at it. Taking a look at the NES itself, it looks very different than consoles today. It has a 2-toned gray color scheme, which helps bring out the red logo on the front. Newcomers to the system will notice that unlike other cartridge-based systems, there is no visible cartridge slot. Instead, the door with the logo on it lifts up to reveal the zero-insertion cartridge loading mechanism. Basically, this was to make the system resemble a VCR, so people wouldn't mistake it for just another version of the Atari or ColecoVision. Quite an interesting design choice for the time. Loading a cartridge consisted of inserting it and then pushing down to lock it into place. Unfortunately, this design choice is also the cause of the system's greatest design flaw, but we'll get to that soon enough. The front of the system also houses the power and reset buttons, as well as the 2 controller ports for 2-player cooperative gameplay. Compatible games could even take advantage of 4 players with the use of a compatible adapter. These controller ports allowed players to use many accessories such as the Zapper, NES Advantage, and many others. In terms of video output, the original Famicom only had one option for connecting to a TV, RF. This type of connection uses a single cable to send the audio and the video to your TV. Although this may sound convenient, it also resulted in poor picture quality and less than spectacular audio quality. This is how most people hooked their NES systems to their televisions, as the coaxial input was most common at the time. However, unlike the Famicom, the Nintendo Entertainment System offered a secondary option for video hookup, composite video. This option separated the video from the audio by using this type of cable, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Using this option greatly improved the picture quality, and the audio was noticeably improved. If you are a collector that wants to get the best picture quality out of your NES without modifying it, composite is the way to go. The bottom of the system has an expansion port that was designed to be used with a variety of NES accessories, none of which were ever released outside of Japan. Most notably was the Famicom Disk System, an add-on which allowed games to be read off of floppy disks, which could hold much more memory than cartridges. Despite the disk system's success in Japan, most popular disk system games were modified slightly and released as regular cartridge games in other parts of the world. Remember when I mentioned that the cartridge loading tray was the source of the NES's greatest design flaw? Well, the continued pressing down of the cartridges is the cause of the infamous flashing red light. In order to prevent game piracy, Nintendo included a lockout chip inside every NES system. A chip inside officially licensed NES games would communicate with this chip, instructing it to run the game. Basically, the chip just looks for a certain low voltage running through it in order to run the game. If this voltage is not found, the game will be on a constant reset pattern, preventing it from running. This chip can be disabled by grounding pin number 4 on the chip, but the game may still not read since the pins on the connector can also be pushed down over time, resulting in a poor connection. Buying replacement pin connectors can help eliminate this problem, but the continued pressing down of the cartridge will wear down the new connector over time. Some companies have sought to eliminate this problem entirely with new cartridge loading mechanisms. My system here is using the Blinking Light Win by Arcadeworks. Basically, it turns your NES into a top-loading system on its side, with no need to push the game down anymore. In my experience, it works extremely well, but the pins are extremely tight when it's first used. This is a good option for collectors who want to play many games consistently, as you no longer have to worry about cartridge loading issues. Speaking of cartridges, the ones the games came on were built to last. Most NES games still work today, and if they don't, a little rubbing alcohol usually sorts them out in a second. This brings us to the NES's strongest aspect, the game library. Super Mario Bros., The Legend of Zelda, Mega Man, Excitebike, Adventure Island, Duck Hunt, and so many more. With more than 800 games in today's market, the NES has one of the most diverse libraries of any system available. It's amazing what developers could do with simple 8-bit technology. There are games of any genre, and everyone, regardless of genre preference, should be able to easily get into the NES's game library. Most games are very affordable as well, although there are definitely a lot of games that would cost the same as my college education. The main advantage of the NES's library is allowing gamers to pick and choose from such a huge collection of games. And with many reviews and opinions on the internet today, there's never been a better time to get into NES collecting. However, if you're in the market for an NES system, there are a few things you should know about. No, we're not exactly done yet. You see, in 1993, 2 years after the release of the Super Nintendo, there were still a few games being released for the NES. So, to cut down on production costs, Nintendo decided to produce this newer model of the NES, commonly referred to as the top loader. This system is half the size of the original NES, and weighs only a fraction of what the original did. As you can see, the design of the system was also changed drastically. So, why would you want to invest in one of these instead of the original model? There's one feature that everyone wants this system for, and that is how the cartridges load. Much like the Super Nintendo, the games can be inserted directly into the top of the system. No more pressing down, no more blinking red light, and even the lockout chip was removed, eliminating any need to disable it yourself. There is only one main disadvantage with this system, and unfortunately it's quite a significant one: the video output. That's right, RF only. What you see is what you get, with no option to get composite video without opening the system and modifying it yourself. If you're using a CRT TV to play your games, then the quality is passable at best. But if you're playing on an HD TV, the picture will look blurry and not good at all. Even worse, due to poor shielding, the RF quality of the top loader is worse than that of the original NES. Despite this, the top loader performs great, and rarely has any trouble playing the games. However, due to its several drawbacks, this system is meant more for collectors nowadays, and as such, they aren't exactly cheap to find online. In 1994, the last official NES game was released, Wario's Woods, and the NES's almost decade-long production run ended. After seeing what a huge impact it had on popular culture at the time, it's no doubt why the NES is held in such high regard as one of the greatest game consoles of all time. With tons of great accessories and a diverse, mostly affordable game library, the NES is one of the most accessible retro game systems out there. Nowadays, Nintendo remains close to its roots, often paying homage to many of their older games on their newer systems. Many popular NES games are even available to download on the Wii, 3DS, and Wii U. If you really want to be original with your games, though, it's hard to go wrong with the original Nintendo Entertainment System, one of the greatest game consoles of all time.